Hand of glory, let those who are asleep remain asleep, in a sleep that is fast and deep, but those who are awake be wide awake. Welcome to another Pine Cones, bite-sized lore from Rowan and Pine. Today we're lighting the wick on something a little sinister for all of you dark history fanatics. A grisly relic from the crossroads of folklore and true crime. You may want to check your locks tonight. This is the story of the Hand of Glory. According to old European belief, a candle made from the severed, dried hand of a criminal who had been hanged, known as the Hand of Glory, had supernatural powers. This was no quaint superstition. The recipe for creating one is laid out in chilling detail in The Secret du Petit Albert, a book of magical recipes translated from Latin into French in the 18th century, and also in the Compendium Maleficarum. The hand was usually the right hand of a felon, cut off while the body still dangled from the gallows. It had been harvested fresh before the body cooled. Once removed, the hand was pickled or mummified, often using a mixture of saltpeter, salt, fat and spices, and then dried under the sun or in an oven lined with horse dung. In a tale from the Ingoldsby legends, published in 1905 by Richard Harris Barham, a witch gleefully reciting her prayers backwards, just like Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins warned us, creates a hand of glory from the remains of 3 hanged murderers. The text reads, "And now before that old woman's door, where naught that's good may be, hand in hand the murderers stand, 1 by 2 by 3. Oh, 'tis a horrible sight to view in that horrible hovel, that horrible crew, by the pale blue glare of that flickering flame, doing the deed that hath never a name. 'Tis awful to hear those words of fear, the prayer muttered backwards and said with a sneer. 'Tis awful to see on that old woman's knee the dead shrivelled hand as she clasps it with glee. And now with care the 5 locks of hair from the skull of the gentleman dangling up there. With the grease and the fat of a black tomcat, she hastens to mix and twist into wicks, and one on the thumb and each finger to fix. Now open the lock to the dead man's knock, fly bolt and bar and band, nor move nor swerve, joint, muscle or nerve, at the spell of the dead man's hand. Sleep all who sleep, wake all who wake, but be as the dead for the dead man's sake." The dead man's sake. Some versions of the legend say that the hand itself acted as a gruesome candle holder. A wax candle would be placed between the posed fingers. In the more common tellings, like Barham's, the fingers themselves were each lit. Each flame on a corresponding finger had meaning. If one wouldn't catch fire, it meant that someone in the house was still awake. And what was the hand used for? Well, burglary. Thieves believed that the Hand of Glory could render the residents of a home into a magical coma, a sleep so deep they couldn't be roused. Some versions even claim the hand could open locked doors, freeze people in place, or reveal hidden treasure. The name Hand of Glory comes from the French main de gloire, which in turn may have been inspired by the mandrake root. In folklore, mandrakes were thought to grow under gallows, springing from the bodily fluids of the hanged. They glowed in the dark and even resembled the shape of a hand. They were dangerous, mystical, and deadly, just like the Hand of Glory itself. The relic wasn't only legend. The Whitby Museum in Yorkshire, England, has the only known surviving hand of glory. It's a blackened, gnarled thing with outstretched fingers, rumoured to still carry a malevolent charge, and it wasn't the only grisly hand reserved for dark purposes. At the haunch of Venison Pub in Wiltshire, a mummified hand was displayed for decades, alongside an old pack of playing cards. The local story went that it belonged to a gambler who was caught cheating during a game of whist. In a rage, a butcher chopped off the man's hand and hurled it into the fireplace. The scorched relic was rediscovered during renovations in 1911, locked in a glass case. That is, until 2010, when it was stolen. Poetic. In Pomerania, in 1834, a soldier named Frederick Berger was arrested for the murder of a herdsman. The victim's corpse had been mutilated, and Berger confessed to cutting off a piece to make what he called a thief's candle. He denied the murder itself, but was executed anyway. A decade later, a sailor named Memel confessed to the crime. Berger, it turned out, had stumbled upon a fresh corpse. In Germany, during the 1905 demolition of a fortified town in North Rhine-Westphalia, workers found a hand preserved in limestone. It became known as the perjury hand, said to have been severed from someone who broke an oath. It was kept in a wooden box at St. Brigida's Catholic Church as a warning to would-be liars. Several stories of this terrible hand are relayed in Henderson's Folklore of the Northern Counties of England. Here is one of them. One dark night, after the house had been closed, there came a tap at the door of a lone inn, in the midst of a barren moor. The door was opened, and there stood without, shivering and shaking, a poor beggar, his rags soaked with rain, and his hands white with cold. He asked piteously for lodging, and it was cheerfully granted him. Though there was not a spare bed in the house, he might lie along on the mat before the kitchen fire and welcome. All in the house went to bed except the servant lassie, who, from the kitchen, could see into the large room through a small pane of glass let into the door. When everyone save the beggar was out of the room, she observed the man himself draw himself up off the floor, seat himself at the table, extract a brown, withered human hand from his pocket, and set it upright in the candlestick. He then anointed the fingers, and, applying a match to them, they began to flame. Filled with horror, the girl rushed up the back stairs, and endeavoured to arouse her master and the men of the house, but all in vain. They slept a charmed sleep, and finding all her efforts ineffectual, she hastened downstairs again. Looking again through the small window, she observed the fingers of the hand flaming, but the thumb gave no light. This was because one of the inmates of the house was not asleep. The beggar began collecting all the valuables of the house into a large sack. No lock withstood the application of the flaming hand. Then, putting it down, the man entered an adjoining apartment. The moment he was gone, the girl rushed in, seizing the hand, attempted to extinguish the quivering yellow flames, which wavered at the fingers' ends. She blew at them in vain. She poured some drops from a beer jug over them, but that only made the fingers burn the brighter. She cast some water upon them, but still without extinguishing the light. As a last resource, she caught up a jug of milk, and dashing it over the 4 lambent flames, they went out immediately. Uttering a piercing cry, she rushed to the door of the room the beggar had entered, and locked it. The whole house was aroused, and the thief was secured and hung. Even in 1880s America, the myth lingered. At Georgetown Medical College, a janitor with eccentric habits stole a dissected hand from the anatomy lab. His partner, a poor, illiterate woman from the south, had begged him to take it. She believed it would bring her luck or help her find treasure, a hideous echo of the old superstition, still alive and bright in the New World. Some scholars believe the Hand of Glory is connected to ancient lightning myths. Sabine Baring-Gould, always good for a spooky theory, likened it to magical objects that could break through stone and iron, like Solomon's Shamir, Scandinavian springwort, German luckflower, or Arabian sesame. All of them tools for unlocking secrets, and most of them plants. The dead man's candle was said to contain Lapland sesame, as if the earth itself was conspiring with the hanged man, as if the boundary between execution and enchantment was paper thin. A thief's relic, a witch's tool, a warning, a wonder. The Hand of Glory burned through folklore like a cursed torch, lighting the way to both treasure and horror. But if you do find yourself the victim of a burglar with an enchanted hand, the Petit also provides a way to shield a house from the effects of the Hand of Glory. It's said that the Hand of Glory would become ineffective and thieves would not be able to utilise it if you were to rub the threshold or other parts of the house by which they may enter with it, with a combination of the gall of a black cat, the fat of a white hen, and the blood of a screech owl. The substance must be compounded during the dog days. These days, the Hand of Glory occasionally shows up in horror fiction, art, video games, and dark fantasy stories as a symbol of forbidden knowledge or cursed power. You'll find it in tabletop games like Dungeons & Dragons, TV like Supernatural, or indie horror films. In tattoo culture, the Hand of Glory has found a new kind of permanence. Often inked in bold traditional styles, it's become somewhat of a gothic emblem, a symbol of mystery, rebellion, or the thin veil between life and death. It's become a shorthand for folk magic at its most chilling. The idea that death can be weaponized, that justice can be twisted. In that sense, the hand still reaches into the modern world, if only through art and stories. This was another Pinecones, short folklore episodes from Rowan and Pine. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review, rate us on your platform of choice, or check out the Patreon where you get early access and bonus content. Until next time, keep your locks bolted and anointed, stay away from hanged men, and never, ever piss off a witch.
Thanks for listening, and fuck yeah, folklore.
Fuck yeah, folklore.